Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel. Today, talking about my top graphic novels of 2023. Now, right off the bat, I'll clarify that these are not graphic novels that were published in 2023. These are just graphic novels that I read this past year and my favorites of those ones. These are also going to be in no particular order. I also couldn't just pare it down to just five of the top ones. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the top 7 graphic novels that I read. Basically, these are just like my favorites, in my opinion, the best of the best of all that I read this year. And I actually, looking back on everything that I did read, I didn't read a ton of graphic novels, like complete stories. I did a lot of back issue reading this year, just random stuff that I'd pick up random issues from random runs. So that made up the bulk of my reading, but definitely a good handful of graphic novels to choose from. And I got some real fun stuff here that I think you might enjoy as well. Starting off, though, I want to talk about some graphic novels that I was disappointed in. Um, Not necessarily that I didn't enjoy, but just didn't quite live up to my expectations. The first I'm going to talk about is Faust. And I'm actually going to I should have put a sticky note. I have to cover up a boob there. But Faust by David Quinn and Tim Vigil. This particular book, like this copy of it, was a Kickstarter book that I bought into sight unseen. I had not read Faust before, but I like Tim Vigil's artwork a lot. He draws really um, he is very much one of the most famous outlaw cartoonists to ever do it. Draws really violent stuff, some really sexy stuff. And Faust is like the piece of work. When people talk about Tim Vigil, talk about Faust. And this book I found pretty disappointing, not due to the artwork, which was great. I mean, this is a really fun, disgusting book to just flip through and enjoy his figure drawing. The way he's able to draw violence and make it come across is great, but the story is really, really incomprehensible. David Quinn really lets down the duo, I would say, because a lot of this is really hard to follow. Doesn't help that the lettering in a lot of cases is very difficult to read. For some reason, they opt to do a lot of point of view narration in script, and it's a really small font script, even in this oversized edition. Very annoying to have to squint and slow down so much to read all these words. And I'm not reading Faust for the words. I want to look at the pictures. I want a plot and a story that is breezy, that gets me flipping the pages. I don't want to have to stop and stare at these words that ultimately amount to nothing. So I actually haven't even finished this book yet because it's such a bit of a slog to read. What I have been doing is just flipping through and enjoying the pretty pictures. So that's what I'll say about Faust. The other disappointment for the year, the only other one I'll talk about, and this one people might think I'm insane for, but it's going to be Maggie the Mechanic by Jaime Hernandez. This is the first collection of well, it's not the first collection of Love and Rockets, because I think what they're doing now with these trade paperbacks is they're just taking chunks of Jaime's work, releasing it as one, Gilbert's work, releasing it as one, and then Jaime Gilbert. So these are all of the Maggie stories from the beginning of Love and Rockets, I think. And don't get me wrong, this is a really great book. I mean, particularly the oh god, what is it? 100 Rooms story, I think is exceptional. The cartooning is out of this world, genius, great stuff. But this is another one where I didn't find myself connecting with the characters and the story the way a lot of people seem to. When people talk about Love and Rockets, they talk about feeling so attached to these characters, and how they feel so real and true to life to them. And maybe it's because I was never part of the punk scene. These books are coming up in the 80s, from the Hernandez brothers were part of the punk scene. There's a lot of like that punk attitude in here. It's not something that it's not a culture I was ever a part of. So a lot of it doesn't resonate with me. So if that's what I'm missing here, then that's understandable. But if you think I'm missing something else, let me know. I would love to know what I'm missing in terms of story and character here. But I do love the cartooning. I do think it's great, and Jaime Hernandez is absolutely a genius. And I'm hoping to get the second volume of this pretty soon. That's the Heartbreak Soup uh, trade paperback by Gilbert Hernandez. Okay, so the first graphic novel I want to talk about as part of my best of the year list is Ducks by Kate Beaton. Kate Beaton is probably most known for her comedic webcomic Hark a Vagrant, which was also published as graphic novels in the past. But Ducks is a graphic memoir that Kate has written about her time working in the Canadian oil sands. After she graduated college, she needed to pay off her student loan debt. And when you're from the small town that she is in Canada, the way that people do that is to go west and start working at the oil fields. So she gets a job basically like at the tool shed, like where the workers come to check out equipment. She's the one that gives them the equipment. And she works at various different sites throughout the 2-year period. And Ducks is her experiences during that time. And the bulk of it is dealing with sexism, because these are male-dominated work sites. She's really one of the only few women that are there, and it can be really tough to read, because the way that she's spoken to by people, the way that, what she physically goes through at these, in some of these instances, and the fact that she has no way to protect herself. Like, this is a space that breeds sexism, because these are just men hyping up each other, hyping up other men. That all they do, it's just all locker room talk all the time, and they're not really like holding each other accountable. So like, even when she goes to HR, she goes to one HR person and is immediately kind of shut down and told that, like, is this really going to be a problem? Like, do you really want to work here? Like, one of those situations. So it can be very difficult to read. Trigger warning: there is sexual assault that occurs to Kate, and it's very tough to read, but it's really well represented in the book. This is a great, great graphic novel about isolation, about being alone and being kind of sort of helpless. Sorry to cut in here, but I also want to specify that when it's talking about isolation, it's not just her isolation, but it's also how these men at the work site react to being separated from the rest of the world, from their families, and what they think they can get away with by being in that kind of environment. But it also has really great themes about the impact of these sites on the environment. There's a lot being said in Ducks, and it's a really beautiful book. That this of every graphic novel I'm going to talk about today, this one and maybe one other one I would recommend to just the lay person, like not even a graphic novel reader, just any reader I think would really enjoy this book. So that's the first one. Second one I'm going to talk about is The Building by Will Eisner, something very different. This is very much, Will Eisner is one of the greatest cartoonists of all time, and this is a wonderful, wonderful book about the life and death of a city building. I actually did a deep dive video on this on the channel. I recommend checking that out if you want to see the interiors and my breakdowns of that. But what it is there's a building in a city, and there's 4 people whose lives are intertwined with that building in some way. And so we're seeing those people's life stories in relation to the building, and in turn that takes us through the life cycle of the building itself. His unconventional page layouts and the way that he sparsely uses panels, it's just really smart. And this is unlike any other graphic novel that I've really seen before. And I just really, really highly recommend this one. And I really recommend you check out that video that I made specifically dedicated to it. Okay, next we're going to get our first and I believe only Marvel comic on here, Marvel or DC actually. And that's going to be Vision by Tom King and Gabriel Walta. I'm a huge fan of Tom King. I think he's one of the ballsiest writers working today that's writing for the big two. He writes very daring stories about established superheroes. He'll take like B-list superheroes or even lower and craft these really terrific stories out of them. I almost put Human Target on this list because I thought that was an exceptional book that I read this year. But I also read Vision, and I do think Vision challenges Mr. Miracle for Tom King's best writing. And it actually, in some ways, is better. I think it's a better complete story. So Vision is about Vision from the Avengers who decides to take like a regular job at the government like, in Washington, D.C., and he wants to have a normal life. So he builds a wife. He builds two children, twin son and daughter. He even builds a dog for the family. And they try to live in their community as normal people. But they are not normal people. They are very obviously androids. And so they deal with prejudice in the neighborhood, and his robot family that he's fabricated are not nearly as diplomatic and good at handling that kind of experience as he is. And it leads to just a snowball effect of, people dying, things going really, really poorly. And it's just fantastic. It's just so well executed. It's unbelievable to me that like Marvel would let this guy go because he's been at DC ever since. I'm pretty sure, and it's easily one of the best things that Marvel has published in this century. It's so freaking good. I really recommend Vision for those of you who are Marvel fans. On the other side of the superhero spectrum, something really, really different. That's going to be Brat Pack by Rick Veitch. This is a 5-issue series that ran in the 90s. Pretty sure in the 90s. This is, if you enjoy The Boys, like the TV show or the comics, The Boys owes a lot to Brat Pack. This was kind of, I guess, the original superheroes being really, really bad type of comic, where the Brat Pack is a reference to the sidekicks of the major superheroes in this universe, in Rick Veitch's King Hell Heroica. And oh boy, are they up to some nasty stuff? The analogs here for Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman are like deplorable. The Green Arrow one is just what they do to recruit these kids and what they do to these kids, what they put them through to become their sidekicks is nasty. It is nasty work. And it's fantastic. Rick Veitch is a master at in interesting panel layouts and just visual storytelling. This is so rad. And if you're a big fan of The Boys, you have to read Brat Pack. And the good news about this is that it's still in print as a trade paperback. If you go on Amazon, Rick Veitch has his own profile there where he's got his stuff set up as print on demand. So you can get a trade paperback of Brat Pack today for, I think, only $20. And while you're there, you're going to buy that. You're going to also get the Max Immortal, which is like, I almost put the Max Immortal on here. Like, they are neck and neck, and they're intertwined. They go together. So check out the King Hell Heroica by Rick Veitch. Brat Pack, awesome. Next, I will talk about Do a Powerbomb by Daniel Warren Johnson. This is one, I didn't do a comic like breakdown video, but I just did do a regular review of this book. This was amazing. This book is so freaking good. Daniel Warren Johnson with this immediately became a creator that was like an auto buy for me. Let me explain. I don't care about Transformers at all. I did not grow up with Transformers. It was not something I was interested in. And a couple months ago, I was at my local comic shop, and the cashier that was working said, "Hey, I'm really looking forward to the new Transformers comic that's going to come out. Did you hear about it?" And I was like, "No, I don't really care about Transformers." He said, "Well, I don't usually either, but the creative team's really interesting to me." I said, "All right, well, who'd they get?" And they said, "Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer, who did Do a Powerbomb." And I threw up my hands and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me. I have to start reading Transformers now, because if these guys are going to do it, I want to read it." So Do a Powerbomb is about I can't remember her name right now, but it's about a young girl who is a wrestler. Her mother died in the ring, but that hasn't stopped her from trying to achieve her own wrestling dreams as well. She is recruited by a necromancer to take part in a wrestling tournament, uh, in which the tag team tournament in which she will fight against other wrestlers from like other dimensions and other worlds, and the winning team gets a wish granted. So she enters in the hopes of being able to bring her mother back to life. This story stunned me. I think there's a reveal at the end of issue 3 or 4 that literally made my jaw drop. This is not just one of the most kinetic, excitingly drawn comics ever. The writing is exceptional and surprising and just sweet and emotional. It is great. It is a great comic, and you have to read it. And speaking of very emotional comics, this is the other one that I recommend to any reader, not just those who enjoy graphic novels. It's going to be Shortcomings by Adrian Tomina. Last year, I had Sleepwalk and Other Stories on my top graphic novels list. I read Summer Blonde by Tomina this year as well, and I read Scenes from an Impending Marriage. And I enjoyed both of them, but I didn't love them as much as Sleepwalk. And I thought, oh, this year I'm not going to have Tomina on my top list. And then I read this last week in a single sitting, and I thought, oh my God, this is one of the best graphic novels I've ever read. These were 3 issues originally published as part of Optic Nerve, his comic, Tomina's comic, and it is about a relationship that is failing, and it's just an incredibly honest portrayal of the way that couples who are not on the same wavelength speak to each other. The dialogue is just really crisp and incisive and on point. What they say to each other is just so cutting. What Tomina is saying is incredibly insightful and thought provoking. There's also an added element here where they're an Asian couple, but he has a fetish for white women, and so there's sexual politics involved and racial sexual politics here. It's so smart, and it's just so honest, and it's just incredible. And it's something like this, which has no action in it. There's nothing comic booky about this, and yet it's riveting and it's page turning, and the cartooning is fantastic and just so well thought out. This is so great. And if you're just a fan of human stories and you enjoy comics, check out Shortcomings. Check out anything by Tomina. Really, he's a really special creator. And finally, the last graphic novel I'm going to talk about today is Monica by Dan Clowes. This one, I didn't know if it was going to end up on this list, but I kept looking at it. I kept thinking about it. I flipped through it again, and I came to the conclusion that I cannot leave this off this list. This is a superb masterpiece by Dan Clowes. I don't know that it's my favorite of his. I really, really like Death Ray, but this is awesome. What Monica is about is it's a cradle to grave story about just the character Monica, but it doesn't read like that, and you don't realize that it's that when you're first reading it, because it seems like random vignettes of just a bunch of people just scattered throughout the world. But as you get closer and closer to that ending, you see how it's all connecting, and you see how some of the events were maybe colored by like a certain narrator, like a certain point of view, so it's a little bit unreliable, and it all just pieces together to create this life story of this character, and it is really outstanding. And if you've ever read a Dan Clowes, you know how precise and just well planned out his panels are and his pages are. That's on full display here. There's so much to look at here. You can just sit and stare at these pages for just hours and constantly be finding something new to be looking at. The drawing is precise. The coloring is perfect. Just everything. This is so well made, and the package itself is great. Great hardcover. Love the actual design of it. Love that he uses his end papers. Like, the book design's great. Everything about this is just terrific. So that's Monica by Dan Clowes, and that's my list of top graphic novels of 2023. Special shout out to It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken by Seth. That was really close to getting on here. But yeah, I want to hear from you about what you read this year that you really enjoyed, your top graphic novels. I also didn't include Swamp Thing on here. Like, obviously, I'm doing the Swamp Thing read along, and I finished the American Gothic story, so like, that's amazing. But I talk about Swamp Thing a lot. I wanted to talk about something different, so I left that off here. But tell me what you read this year, what graphic novels you loved, and if I've read it, I'll respond back to you, or I will check it out myself. Thank you for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.